Hi, everybody. I'm really excited because today I have my friend Anne Myslewski here. She is, what are you? Go ahead and tell everybody what you're doing.
I'm the vice president for opera and classical programming at Untrapped in Virginia.
In Virginia, yes. And Untrapped is an incredible place that every summer and also during the year or also just the summer?
All year round.
All year round. Does opera and outreach and all sorts of things for young artists and professionals alike, and everybody comes together and they produce amazing shows. And you just finished.
We did. Actually, we just did a big symphonic concert with the Richmond Ballet and the Richmond Symphony and a few of our soloists. We did a Carmina Burana 2 nights ago. That was the end. We've got still more concerts. Sting is tonight.
Oh my God.
No orchestra. No opera singers, but maybe next year. Maybe I'll get it next year.
Actually, it's funny that you mentioned Carmina Burana because a lot of pieces that we listen to in video game music, oftentimes it feels like they're borrowing from Carmina Burana. So we might hear some of that today.
That's great by me. I love that piece.
But so, what do you know about video game music? Do you know anything about video game music?
I don't know very much. I'm going to date myself so profoundly. When I was a kid, I was like Pac-Man, Mario Brothers, the first Zelda. Like Zelda was a big deal. Now I play almost exclusively Tetris. Like that's all I got. And we did the National Symphony in one of their residencies with us a number of years ago, did a concert of symphonic music called Play that I attended, that I worked on, that I only knew 2 songs from, and they were from Mario Brothers and Zelda.
Perfect.
So,
okay.
Yeah, that's what I got.
This is a new beginning for you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really excited because we're actually going to start with Tetris. So my plan today for everybody that's watching is we're going to start from oldish, middle-ish video game history, and then we'll go on with modern with some stuff like Baldur's Gate 3 and Starfield and stuff. So we're going to start, in fact, with the Tetris theme, which you already know, but we should talk about it because I find it's kind of interesting. That's quite the loop, isn't it?
It is. Although, if you want to equate it to classical music, that's Bach right there. That's like a little Bach fugue almost, right? The walking bass, like the whole thing. It's great.
Well, it really has this. Oh, one sec. It really has its dancing vibe to it that I find so charming, and it I wonder where that derives from. I actually don't know. I know that there was that movie Tetris that explains the detailed history of Tetris.
Yes.
I don't fully know, but I find it interesting that it has a sort of like Russian dance feel to it, even though it was made in Japan. I'm pretty sure it's a really interesting thing.
Yeah, but I feel like there is that Russian kind of concept. I watched the movie a couple weeks ago. I feel like there was the Russian connection to it, but I do love that. Like you can almost see the guy doing the splits, right? And that there is that folk music kind of vibe to it for sure.
It speaks to as well, it's so interesting because in that time period when video game music was starting, this is the beeps and boops that people refer to, that they think that, that they feel that we're still there, even though we absolutely are not. And it's so funny that even though these are beeps and boops, there is a sense of a cohesive melody that is so hard to find. This is interesting. Yep. Actually, I have a question for you. Are you a singer as well?
Yeah. So I started musically as a pianist, and then I did get 2 degrees in opera performance before deciding that being on stage is not my jam. Yeah.
Ah, okay.
And actually, I got to know Untrapped because when I was in graduate school, I did an assistantship there with the director on a piece that they were premiering. And just loved it.
Yeah.
So I stuck around.
So is melody, like, what in terms of musical structure, like what's most important to you, especially like now, because you also hear like thousands of auditions all the time every fall. So like when you're listening to a piece of music, I guess from an operatic perspective, are you leaning on, will you lean on melody? Do you like things that are rhythmic and kind of, sort of off the beaten path? Like, because this Tetris is all melody at this point. Like that's all there is to it. You know what I mean?
Right. I am definitely driven by melody, but I'm not afraid of angularity. Like I do love Shostakovich. I do love any number of kind of newer. It doesn't have to be like just melodic. I'm not an all Puccini girl. I love Puccini. Was that about all Puccini though? And I will say that
it's a ship. It's almost better. So yeah. It's just gonna drown you out.
They never tell me when you're coming, and I was like, I saw them pull up just as I was getting up past. It's like,
okay, go ahead.
Okay, great. But melody, I think, is really the most important thing for me, and the execution of the melody. So, the thing with Tetris, like there is a melody there, but it is not nuanced, right? It is not. It is like, and I think and it's all kind of one dynamic level. It is all one. Like it is one dimensional. So for me, I like the stuff I'm looking for melodically usually has some variance as far as the way in which it comes across, something that kind of keeps me engaged. Yeah.
If it's too much on a silver platter where it's like, here's a melody line, it can get a little bit redundant really quickly.
Yeah. And to be honest, a little bit of it, even in that melodic structure, I think having some of that dissonance is really helpful. Because it does just allow you to get back into a beautiful melody, but you need a little bit of the crunch to help you to do that sometimes.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk more about that and like the journey of a melody line. I think that's really interesting. It certainly appeals to me as well. So next up is something, speaking of melody, Final Fantasy VI. It's called Terra's Theme. And this is just such an incredible video game and such an incredible soundtrack. And Final Fantasy music is really just phenomenal. What do you think of that?
Well, I mean, obviously a very different approach than the first one. We've got multiple voices. I'm so glad that the sampling is better than it was back then. I'd love to hear an orchestra actually do this because I think it would be beautiful. Like,
do you want to hear an orchestra do it?
Yeah. Do you have one?
Yeah.
Pop it up. Like when the brass came in, I was like, oh, brass. And then it's like, oh, brass.
Hey, God, I'll get it for you.
But yeah, I mean, definitely like, nice to have the the orchestration, like we've got orchestration in this one, which was lovely. And I will say too, I love that there is repetition that you can kind of hang your hat in. I think that sometimes in orchestral music, like you just have to wait so long for that theme to come back around. And I really appreciate, it was one of the things Mark Campbell, who wrote the libretto for Volpone, which was the piece that got me into Wolf Trap. That was what I insisted on. I remember him saying that that repetition is not the enemy. Like, it is okay to have a repeated motif and have people be able to have their hang their hats on it, be able to get it into their ears. And I will say that, I mean, God, it's been almost 20 years since I was an intern there, and I can still sing like huge parts of that show because of the repetition. For real. Okay.
That's actually a really interesting point, though, because one of the things that I think video game music it intrinsically has to do is repeat, because it's an odd dance, because in a way, kind of like opera. I mean, not kind of, I mean, completely like opera. The music serves the drama and serves the purpose of what's happening on stage or in the TV accent. Right. And if there's too much variance, I think it's really hard to cling on to something and feel some sort of emotion. And ultimately, like these things, like Tara's theme is about a character, so that's her motive. And so in 2 minutes, we have to understand and connect to why that music is the way it is, so that we can then like latch onto that character emotionally. Right. And if you don't have that repetition, you do lose a little bit of it kind of just meanders around and it doesn't lock in. And it again highlights the importance of melody and like that drive forward with melody, Yeah.
And let me ask this though, like this theme is obviously female, right? Because of where it sits and because of the orchestration. I'll be so curious to know as we go through, like whether thinking about that changes or whether that still remains fairly standard in the way that these themes are put across. So I don't have any answers, but I hope we'll that somewhere.
Yeah.
Come.
It's beautiful. It's really beautiful. Like I mean that would be right at home, like in a 7,000 seat outdoor amphitheater to listen to right next to, I don't know, Beethoven.
Whatever.
I mean, like, it's beautiful.
I mean, it's interesting, right? Because of obviously, I think it's also really it's interesting in a couple different ways. First of all, you have the fact that like these composers were working with the sound sampling that they could work with at the time of, in the early 90s or mid 90s, I should say. And then to take that and then orchestrate it, you hear a lot of the nuance that we obviously miss when we're listening to the 8-bit, 16-bit, MIDI as we get move along. Like obviously there's a sound quality that's different. And now of course we have synthesizers, which make things, it's almost too fake at times, but So it's interesting because I feel like video game music is always dancing around the symphonic element. So then when you get an example like this, where this is from Distant Worlds, which is a touring production of Final Fantasy music, it's amazing. But I think it's nice that we do that because it's for fans and we celebrate the music. But I really, like you said, I mean, just like take this and like just drop it in a symphony performance.
Well, yeah, I mean, because when you listen to that melody, I'm going to bring it back to opera for a minute, but like that has that kind of soaring melody that we would look for in like Puccini, someone who controls our emotions in a very specific way. You could hear, I mean, if you had a singer doing that theme, like there are so many things that they would bring to it, that they could do to it that would really bring an audience member in. It really is very emotional. It's so funny. My first job out of college was selling pianos. This is a tangent, but it's a little related. Doing keyboards and organs and digital pianos. And I remember it was for Yamaha, and I remember talking about the sampling process, and they sampled in a clean room, so there was no acoustic with it. And as the samples got better, as I moved on from that and could listen to different digital instruments, you can hear the difference when they've learned how to sample in a warmer way, where it's not quite so cold and so kind of clinical. That really has a little bit more warmth to it. So.
And people really react negatively to like when it's interesting how we can't escape the humanistic aspect of like the orchestral, the performance experience. And I think it's interesting. I've had people on here as well that if they hear the synth too much, they're like, yeah, it's nice, but the synth. And it's like, well, yeah, I know, but like you understand, like we as people that are in the industry or having been exposed to the industry need to be able to look past that and understand that the emotional connection that music is deriving is actually more important than whether or not it's synthetic or. It's an interesting thing.
Yeah, I mean, because I'm trying to find if there's an analog to, I don't know, like it's a little bit like the book to movie thing, right? Like I love because I read it, but like I am going to go see the movie because this character made me feel this way, and I want to see how they're going to tell the story in this new way. I think that there's a real that emotional connection is not to be, I mean, you just can't discount that. That's what, like, that connection is what we all want from the things we take in artistically and for leisure. Like, we just, like, yeah, sorry, that makes all kinds of sense to me.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, we're going to stay in this era. We're going to shift to, let me X out of that. You know what Super Mario sounds like, so I'm going to skip this one, actually. Okay. So I just finished up this game called Chrono Trigger, which came out around the same time as what I just played for you, Final Fantasy VI. Mm-hmm. And so, but it's a different composer. That composer was Nobuo Uematsu. This composer is Yasunori Mitsuda.
Okay.
And I love that's not right. This is another character's theme. This character is called Shala.
Sweet. So I was looking at the little graphic on the YouTube channel. Was that the redhead? Is this the redhead's theme or the?
No, none of those.
Okay. I was trying to figure out what.
Well, so Shala, do you want to know the backstory a little bit?
Yeah,
So Shala is essentially forced. So in Chrono Trigger, you go back in time and forward in time, and you manipulate time. It's a really beautiful concept, and a lot of people that played this game are my age, mid early 30s. And, so for a lot of people, this was their first experience talking about death and talking about time. And, and so Shala is forced to control a certain magic to energize this thing that ends up being it fuels the main villain. And she's kind of forced to do it against her will. And she's caught up in this scenario where she wants to do what's right and eventually aids the redhead that you saw. That's Chrono. And so her theme, there's an inherent sadness to it, which is interesting because she's technically paired up with her mother is the queen, and her mother ends up being really villainous. Not dissimilar to something like Magic Flute, but it actually feels like the stakes are a little bit higher for Shala rather than for a little bit. But so that's a little bit of loose context of that.
Yeah. Well, that makes a lot of sense too, because you've got the the rhythmic motive, which kind of gives you that forward motion and a little bit of I don't know, maybe a little anxiety, just because it does, it's very regular and very kind of just turning back and forth, like a clock hand, I guess, but also the way that melody surfs so beautifully over top of it.
Yeah. It's a really interesting thing, I think, too, when we have a rhythmic propulsion that is basically it doesn't shift, it doesn't change, it just is what it is. And then over top you have, again, like you said, this sort of not even undulating, but just this melody that kind of takes off like an airplane and then lands back. And it really is I guess I would say that there's probably an oboe used there or some sort of instrument some wood instrument that is really efficient at tugging at the heartstrings, and it really makes you feel like, I don't know, a bit of a plaintive quality. I don't know if you call it that, but that's what I took away from it.
Definitely. It actually, one of a song that I love for kind of the same reason, it's a pop song, is Foo Fighters' Everlong, because he just surfs it, but he's got that kind of really driving rhythmic thing that doesn't tend to move at all, but is able to surf these super long phrases. And the fact that it's not it's minor modal enough that you can't really tell where you end, where you are as far as positivity, negativity. You're in this kind of
the nebulous. Yeah. Well, and I think that's a really interesting point too, because so often, in these games, it's good versus evil and so on and so forth, right? And the tale as old as time, if you will. But it is interesting when music brings into it this quality of sort of ambiguousness when it comes to emotion, which is really fun to play with because it can mean multiple different things. It's a really good point that you brought up.
Yeah. I mean, because as someone who doesn't know the story at all, I definitely didn't hear that's not a hero theme, right? That's not that's definitely, and it's not necessarily someone who needs to be saved. It's not so plaintive. It's not so searching, but it is that kind of liminal, something without that center to kind of anchor it. You don't know which way it might go. I don't know.
Totally. Yeah. I love it. And also guessing things out of context is so much fun because it's you can't really be wrong per se, Okay, this is a song I don't know. It's Gerudo Valley from The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. So Ocarina of Time was for the N64, Nintendo 64. And people really like this tune. And I didn't grow up with Zelda, so I have no connection to it, but I'm curious to hear what it sounds like.
And splendid.
Oh my God, I love it. Oh my God. I need a rose between my teeth.
hasn't looped yet.
No.
Huh.
And like that little blues note right there, that was nice.
Yeah.
Love it.
There's the loop. That's the loop. He's up there.
Yeah, I definitely need like that's flamenco.
Yeah.
Like that's so great. Although that's not a game I ever played, but I love that it's called the Ocarina of Time. Like way to work a musical instrument into the title. But boy, that's fun, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, I like not playing the game, but having all kinds of pictures come up in my head about what that music could be accompanying, both from like a journey to like even just like a dance scene from a movie almost, you know? Like, I mean, that's great.
I sort of feel like there's like some sort of running around or being chased like playfully. Yeah. It is interesting how like you hear I think this is only a couple years after the stuff I've sent you. I'm pretty sure. I can't remember. I don't have the times right in front of me. But it's interesting how we didn't loop until 2 minutes in, whereas the other tracks, because of the limitations, were already looping. And that's sort of where it's interesting that it's becoming a sort of fully fledged musical idea.
Right.
With layers of polyphony and harmony and you know, and all sorts of things.
So right. And that in the lengthening too, like the number of musical ideas increase, like you said. But that's, I mean, that development, that exposition is like a normal compositional thing, right? Like that's like a classical music trope that we have the melody and then we develop it and then we turn back around and maybe develop or restate it. So we've got that regular structure in this. So like,
I also think it's interesting too, because I just want to double check something, because I'm pretty sure that Koji Kondo Zelda. Koji Kondo is the originator of hold on, sorry. Some music senses the forefront of these works led their overworld theme research. Yeah. Koji Kondo is the person who created the Zelda theme song. And the fact that, you know, Zelda came out, let me just do some quick original Zelda release date was February 21st, 1986, and then Ocarina of Time
that sounds right.
Date was November 1998.
Yeah. Wow.
Time span.
Yeah.
And, you know, the Zelda main theme does loop, but it's still like motivically, what am I trying to say? It like it has a motif, and it exists, and it's, I don't know what the hell I'm trying to say. I'm tired. You know what I mean? Like it's been years, and it's there's an evolution of that sort of style of music.
Right. I mean, it's one of the things we love about classical composers is looking at their early work and seeing kind of what those initial ideas and the way that they express them, and then looking at the later work and seeing what parallels you can draw back to the way they learned how to do it and how they've grown and what influences they've taken in, whether it's, you know, technique or whether it's melody writing, whether it's the orchestration, the sounds that they're playing with. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I know, and even borrowing from themselves at times too.
Yeah.
It's cool. I'm gonna skip this, and I'm gonna skip that.
This is so fun.
Are you having a good time?
Yeah.
All right, good. I'm gonna give you something really fun. Right, you've heard this, but it's just funsies. You know, we talk about all this music. I just say that link, but you know, something like the Mortal Kombat 3 theme song is really interesting to me because it ties back to the idea that music can enhance pretty much anything, and in the case of Mortal Kombat, literally combat to death, right? Like a deathly battle.
Yeah.
And so Mortal Kombat 3 has just such an amazing song, and I think we should just vibe out to it for a little bit and, like, I don't know, talk about how it makes us feel, I guess.
Choose your destiny. Flawless victory. Choose your destiny. Flawless victory. Fight!
I definitely was in the club to music like this. Like, this is bringing me back to a very specific point in my life. I love it. I love it.
Excellent. Liu Kang. Sonya. Jax. Kitana. Jade. Sub-Zero. Scorpion. Cyrax. Smoke. Shiva. Motaro. Fight.
We could stop there.
Do we have to?
No.
Sweet. Oh my God.
Hard not to like Mortal Kombat's theme song.
Right, man. That's awesome. Is that the first instance with the voiceover?
No, I think that. Well, actually, I wonder how the first one went. The original, yeah, it still has it. I don't know if it's the first one with voiceover, but it really is kind of empowering, isn't it?
Right. I mean, like it's God, there was a group called Lo-Fi All-Stars that had a song called Battle Flag that's a little, like, it's not as driving, but it's got a little bit of the same vibe to it that was like, yeah, and there was a bunch of stuff like this that was played at clubs all the time in my prime going out days, which I, again, totally dating myself, but I don't care. But it is like, I mean, how do you sit still with that? Like,
Yeah, it's impossible.
there's no way. And I mean, and even the meat slap kind of moments in it, right? At the percussion at the beginning does not sound like a drum. Like, it sounds like a
Yeah.
very, like, yeah, it's hard. I'm a little amped up, man.
You're
That's good.
Well, actually, so that's an interesting segue because there's a game that I really love called Punishing Gray Raven, which is actually a mobile game.
Huh? That's cool.
You like that?
that has everything in it when you think about it. Like the fact that that composer has worked in like a great beat, has like kind of classical like orchestral instruments, has that choir, has a pop vocalist, like, and it all really works together. Like that dropout when you get the pop vocalist at the end with it's really beautiful.
Mm-hmm. And it tells a story, you know.
Yeah.
It tells a story of a person who is sacrificing themselves, working hard, deciding to stand up and saying, no, I'm going to, you know, vanquish my enemies, fight my foes, whatever. There's a real galvanization. It's great stuff to listen to at the gym.
Yeah, I bet. I feel like Marvel has stolen quite a bit from this. Like when you look at like the soundtracking for like the big kind of blockbuster movies, there's a lot of transference for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not saying that this should go in a symphony hall anytime soon or anything like that. But the point is more just that, like, this is great music that should be highlighted. And it's a shame that it's like tucked into its little corner. And Punishing Gray Raymond is not necessarily very popular. And so, you know, it's got like, it's, you know, this 3 years ago, it averages about 1 million views per year. It came out 3 years ago. You know, I mean, 3.3 million is nothing to scoff at, but like, you know, it could be triple that. And it's just an awesome piece. It could be on the radio. There's no reason why it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how video game music is sort of sequestered in its little hidey holes, and there's all these different subcategories of niches and things. And, you know, it's.
Do you think why do you think it is sequestered? Is it because there are so many subgenres that people don't know how to kind of talk about it? Or is it like,
well, I think,
what's your opinion?
I mean, I think there's still a giant stigma around video game music and video games in general. I think that it's hilarious because video games bring in more money than the film industry. Yeah. And yet, you know, I'm pretty sure if you look up the stats, most people have a console in their homes. I don't know why that is. Honestly, it's a thing that I try to buck against because it's like, this is really well deserved. Not just this piece, but all these pieces that I'm sharing with you, like, deserve a seat at the table. And the fact that they kind of don't really have one, it's unclear why that is. Yeah. It's unclear why people resonate with games, play games, experience games, and yet there's a larger mass of people that kind of look down on it. Or maybe it's because like in the 80s and 90s, it was like a very nerdy, geeky thing to be into. Yeah, maybe. But we've turned that corner like 10 years ago. So it's like
that's not, well, although maybe it's those people who are my age who are the ones making those decisions. Maybe that's it.
I don't know. Who knows? Who knows? I mean, there's a whole, you know, it's an interesting thing because there's a whole like world. One of the things I saw on this, you know, this Pops concert thing that they're going to bring in some video game music, you know, people were talking about how there's a whole swath of composers that have been out here doing this thing. And it's like, yeah. And you know who struggles to have contemporary works that are sometimes interesting and actually, you know, full of melody and, you know, are valid? The classical music. There's a struggle there.
And there's so much crossover between the, like, even just the orchestration, like the way that these pieces are set up, like when you're like, they are constructed in a way that translates from one to the other. Like there's not that much work to do, especially in some of these later ones where you'd have to really.
Oh, you just transpose it, get the rights, and then put it on.
Right. I mean, like it's done. And, you know, to your point, like if someone loves video games but never hears it in the concert hall, then will they ever know that they like Puccini? Will they ever know that they like Beethoven if someone isn't making those connections for them?
Well, right. And that's the thing. And I remember I saw a concert that was like, not to go on a tangent, but I saw a concert in DC that was like, we came to you. It was a video game night. We came to you. Now you come to us. And I said, that's the wrong approach. That's the wrong approach. You should take the music that's in this. You should transfer it to a concert where that has Shostakovich and whatever, like, you know, Mendelssohn, Brahms, you know, these usual players that we hear every single weekend. And you say, okay, maybe there's a way that I can invite, we'll get to a track in particular from one game that I feel could translate today. And in fact, in October, I'm going to a music concert based on this game, and same with Final Fantasy. These you could easily just take this and bring it over. And the fact that they don't, I think it's a shame because I really think about like the way to move forward and evolve is to embrace even movie music. John Williams, like, I know that we're starting to get there, but there's no reason why John Williams still needs to reside in a Pops concert. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to, and why, because it's, why do we like malign Pops? Like, what is why do we have a separate category? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. I agree. I think that, and Pops used to be code for music theater. Like that's what those concerts I feel like used to be, but I don't necessarily like that's certainly not the case anymore. They are much more kind of wide ranging. Like it's speaking to your film music. So we did the NSO and Wolf Trap presented music from Studio Ghibli, the Joe Hisaishi, which is gorgeous. And like we sold out 2 nights. We probably could have sold a third.
Yeah, I'm sure you could have.
And there were, like, if I had to guess, because like the normal places where our normal patrons gather were all empty. Like, I think that was a brand new audience for us. I think those people had never been out to see us, and they came not because it was the symphony, not because it was Wolf Trap, because it was the music of Joe Hisaishi, and he was conducting too, which was a huge deal. Yeah, that's right. I
would have had to go.
He was so lovely.
Yeah, he seems like the cutest, nicest person. Yeah, but the thing is, but that's the very thing. I remember I went to Boston to see Distant Worlds, this Final Fantasy concert, and I tell you, every single seat was full. The merch line was around the building inside. I don't want to say that obviously like Wolf Trap doesn't have ego, but my point is just that like there is a certain degree of, well, we are the XYZ symphony, and that's why we only put on this music. And I don't know, do you think that that's true? I mean, you interact with these people all the time.
I don't necessarily think it's that. I think that they think first that there's a lot for them to balance as far as programming, as far as what it is, like what are their goals, what their musicians love to do. Like I think there are probably some orchestral musicians who have had limited experience with this music, and like I can't imagine a violinist not liking it because it's real fun to play. I can only guess, right? But I also wonder if it seems like it's so compartmentalized to your topic that they feel like it's a specialty,
yeah.
You know, like it's not. And I mean, like the orchestral programming thing, there's so much rep and there are so many people involved. I think it's a much bigger ship to turn because it is like, it's a big organization with a lot of different stakeholders. I wonder if that's part of it.
And that's the thing too. I mean, I think whenever you're dealing with non-for-profit, you're juggling a million different things.
Symphony orchestras, they do have, because they have huge numbers of people, they have huge, very tight rehearsal schedules, and numbers of required services that they have to kind of figure out, and the Jenga of repertoire, conductor, venue, because almost no orchestra is only in like their concert hall anymore. Right. I do feel like there is a huge call across the business of like all of the classical performing arts to get people into the theater. But I will say that this year, for an example for us, like our chamber music programming and our orchestral programming, like was great for really like the first time in a number of years. Not the first time in a number of years. It was really great for over the last number of years. Like there was a real increase in people, in ticket counts, in like it just felt great. And I wonder if that means that we're coming back a little bit more in that orchestral chamber music kind of way. And if so, if that will make decisions more or less conservative from the programmers. Do you know what I mean? Like if they will see this in the programming that has happened over the last year and a half and say, we must do that, or whether the support will give us all a little breathing room to take some different risks. So
well, and that's the thing too, is that you do have to be careful And obviously programming something that you have no knowledge about is always going to be a little bit more stressful than like, oh, I know exactly what I'm getting when I program Mahler third. I know who's going to come. I know the attendance. I know the rate. It's like if I do a video that I know will be successful, I'm obviously going to lean into that because that's, as a business owner, it's like, oh, well, I know this will do well, so let me focus in on that. But then also you want to be able to be like, no, there's other things that are worth exploring and worth listening to. Speaking of listening to, do you want to finish that thought or do you want to?
No, go ahead.
All right, we should keep listening to.
Oh my God.
Okay, next up is going back to Orchestra Land. This is from a game, The Elder Scrolls, which is a very timeless series, and this is the main theme from The Elder Scrolls 3, Morrowind.
The other kind of good. Really good.
At least, he said.
They hauling me across the way.
Yeah.
Short and sweet.
Yeah, but like that, one of my first concerts was a Lord of the Rings live with orchestral music, and that first battle scene and like the vista scenes, like I remember just having goosebumps because I knew, to your point about like knowing the story and knowing the characters, like when that happened, just like goosebumps the whole time because I knew what was going to happen. You can feel the travelers, you can see the goal in the distance, that how hard it's going to be to reach it. And I mean, I don't know the game, but like there's something about the hero's quest in this music for sure.
For sure. Well, and actually, to your point, I mean, Bethesda Games in general, the company that makes these, they're actually out in Rockville, Bethesda headquarters. And, Bethesda makes games that are really about that exploration, and you never know what's across the next mountain or the next cave, or, you don't know what they just released a new game called Starfield, but we'll listen to a track, the main theme a little later, which is about exploring space. And so this is about exploring like the high fantasy land of Morrowind and like all that entails. And it's the land of, I believe, dark elves. And, it's dense, and it gives player autonomy, which is often hard to find. It's really like it's an open world, but you can kind of do whatever you feel like, and it's to your liking. You can be a person in this world and really explore it. You can have that oh God, what's it called when you want to? You can have that escapism and really lean into it.
Yeah,
which is cool.
That's awesome.
And musically, you hear that, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, like,
that was the takeaway.
It definitely feels like you could, like, you've got the vista, you don't have the direction, right? Like, you could this way.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of like Copeland-y, like brass, open fourths and fifth kind of happening too. That is really lovely.
Well, and I think that open quality really feels like sort of like, I don't know, your mind creates a whole bunch of different images, like walking into a doorway or entering into a space. Like it's a very welcoming sound, I think, having those open force and fists, because it does feel like a sort of embrace of openness, you know?
Yeah.
Cool. Next up is a Super Smash Brothers Brawl main theme. This actually has a ton of opera in it.
So loud. I bet.
Das Holder Wave other team.
That's your point right there, Margo.
I know.
Our little hymn moment.
Yeah. The words mean something too.
Oh.
That's the same composer as Terra's theme that we heard earlier on.
Oh.
Yeah. Yep.
It is a very different.
Self-taught, mind you.
Oh, good for him. That's great. That's great. I mean, like, that's like, first of all, there's a lot going on, which is great. If you had told me that was what I was going to hear for Super Smash Brothers, like a game with that name, I would have been like, yeah, whatever, dude. It's going to be like the EDM one, right? Like, but, like, first of all, super incongruous with the name and like what just came through my headphones. Super, which is great, right? There, like that, like the fact that it is all underpinned by like a really like legit chorus, like classical, like, I mean, like that's some like real singing from the soloist, from that, like that choral group was bonkers. They were great. And to have something like with that kind of epic, slightly military like approach, like you've got God and country in that theme, right?
Yeah.
God and country in a very specific time period that I don't think exists anymore. Like I could see that in the 40s, like that'd be perfect, right? But wow, it's great.
It's pride, you know. It's like yes, because the lyrics are all about like, I fight my enemy fights alongside me, because Super Smash is like where all the characters from the Nintendo games come together and they fight each other. That's the game.
Wow, got it.
Yeah. So like, you know, it's like the battle royale of our favorite characters.
Yes.
Zelda versus Mario and Leaf versus Luigi, you know. So it really is this like very galvanizing thing, and you're right. I love it. I made a video about this not so long ago, and it's funny because a lot of people are like, this song was the day I realized I loved classical music.
The gateway.
But see, but that's people going to where people are,
right?
It's ultimate way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's real. I mean, like
okay.
if you get introduced to that sound in a way that is like also connected to something you love to do, like, I mean, I don't know about how you got introduced to classical music, but for me, it was like we had a Pavarotti record in the mix with like all the other stuff that we listened to. Like my family is not musical. We don't have like, I don't have that kind of background in my family, but that was just another one of the records that we listened to, and I loved it. Like I loved it as much as the Beatles or the Pat Benatar, Foreigner,
Crazy.
the Greek harpist that was super popular in like the 70s and 80s. I forget his name. Yeah, Andreas Fighter or something like that. Anyhow, it wasn't Yanni, it was the other guy.
Yeah, the other one. I thought it was maybe Yanni. Well, it's interesting though, because actually Nobuo Uematsu's music is what got me into classical music. Because I used to listen to it, the piano renditions of it on repeat. I had a piano album that was just covers, and I used to listen to it all the time. And then I was like, oh, I love music. Oh, and then I ended up in the plays. And then it wasn't until undergrad that I listened to opera that I was like, oh, look at Luna.
Luna's like, Dad, enough.
Like, can you please? Well, let's keep going. Speaking of, another hour. I have a couple more tracks. I want to go through this journey with you. So the next piece we will listen. Well, actually, I think we will. It's Celtic, and it's from an awesome game, Metal Gear Solid, which is one of my favorite games of all time. And I can't remember when this came out. I think it was like turn of the 20s. So I think it was around 1999-ish.
Awesome.
Totally different soundscape. Both. Yeah, that song is one of the key songs of my childhood, so I could listen to that on repeat. Yeah, it's so nice.
Beautiful. It's beautiful. Like, I'm glad you gave me the Celtic reference, because at the beginning it sounded almost like a Renaissance motet, like the way that the choral part is put together at the very beginning.
Yeah,
I went to a very different spot. I wouldn't have had that context, but boy, doesn't the soloist sounds like he sounds like Judy Collins' early stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a real right. There's a real connection between that. I don't know. I loved it. It was like just beautiful.
It is an interesting thing to think about how the vocals can create a sense of nakedness and a sense of like raw vulnerability and like emotional depth that I think it's hard for things that are not vocals. I think like vocals are really the thing, that human connection. I think that that's the difference between hearing a bow on a string, be played versus versus like the like rawness of something like that, because that wasn't like a perfect vocalism. It had imperfections in it and stuff, and yet that's the thing that sort of that soprano especially guides us in such an interesting way.
Yeah. Is there I feel like we've heard a lot of kind of female solo lines like that. Are there games where the theme is like a guy, like a tenor or a baritone kind of vocalizing, or is that more of a trope for? Okay, good.
It tends to so females tend to be the voice of God, very similarly to opera, celestial voice, the voice of like purity, innocence. Sort of when you want ambient ethereal, you go female soprano. Typically men are saved for villains or for manly power. It's a little bit too stereotypy, unfortunately, but that is a trope that that exists in video game music very plainly. But I think it also has to do with layering, because if you're structuring out a phrase, you can't, if the instruments sound too much in the same range as the male, it's difficult to like pull it up. But that said, I mean, I might as well play you this. You tell me. It's a funny thing. I'm curious to hear. So I'm actually very intrigued to see what you have to say about this as a person who hears hundreds of arias every single year.
2 weeks from today, man.
Oh my goodness.
It's almost that time of year.
Maybe someone will show up with this one. This would make your day, probably.
I'm always up for hearing something new.
It's definitely the closest thing to an operatic aria. It's like a made-up language.
Love it. A little bit of like Slavic, Russian, thing.
Some trovatore,
Right?
Lapidas.
Like, I would 100% watch that opera. Holy shit, that was great. That was super fun. Although here's the thing too, like having been in this, like the mix is like I wanted more of him in the mix.
Yeah, no, there wasn't. Yeah,
Like,
it was.
I was like, I mean, the orchestra is great, but like can't hear him as well. That's why I was like because I wanted to hear a little bit more. There are volume things I could have used, but I'm old.
Yeah.
It's hard.
No, but the mix is really poor.
Yeah, I really wanted to hear kind of more of what he was doing. Those lines are great. Like
It's all B flats. I've
Yeah.
tried. I'm like, I want to cover it because I know I can, but it's like also very hard. And so every time I go to do it, I'm like, yeah.
I'm so tired. There's gonna be one day where you're like, today's the day,
Today's the day.
and we'll probably
Great
hear
to
you.
hear
We'll probably
God.
hear you in Vienna from wherever it's
Yeah.
for you are. We'll be like, oh, today's the day.
God shattering star, baby. Yeah. Well, there's a virility there, and that's an example of like a strong
Yeah.
male presence. You don't get a lot of male soloists, but that's definitely one.
Yeah, that's very cool, and it is super powerful and very kind of like energizing and very masculine, right? Like that is like the archetype right there of the suit. That's the hero. That's the hero getting like psyching himself up for their journey, right? Like
That's
that
the
is-
villain.
Oh, even better.
Yes.
He's gonna succeed at all. Even better that it's the villain, quite frankly. That's great.
Well, because no one knows that tenors are never the villains.
I know.
That's a shame.
It's a shame.
I told you. Oh, all right. We'll keep it going. Just there's so many tracks I want to get through, and I know that we're at almost half hour. So speaking of, this is called Grandma, and you would think it's a positive. It's not. It's from a game called Nier Automata. It's a beautiful song. It really. So it's written in the chaos language, and the chaos language is a made-up language that has some roots in modern language, but mostly it's just I wouldn't call it gibberish because it is a proper made-up language. But it is sort of borrowed from all these different languages, and I think it's actually like a real evolution of classical art song. So I'm curious to hear what you. Yes, the chaos language is used both in Nier Gestalt, which is what the Grandma's from, and then also in the sequel, which is Nier Automata. So they're in both. And only in the music, which is really interesting because, you can't understand what they're saying, but it goes to show that maybe you don't need to understand what they're saying.
Flâner
It's lovely. I like. First of all, the vocal line is beautiful. There's a little bit of, you can hear the French R, like the French spoken casual R and things. And I keep thinking I understand.
You're like, what does it mean? Yeah.
And it's so fun because like I'm looking at on YouTube, I'm looking at the other things that are coming up when you're giving me these suggestions, and they're always like straight ahead classical things. Like they went back and looked at some of the Faust research that I was doing. It pulled up the Faust trio, If it not the Scotto, as one of like the next ones on this playlist. I was like,
not quite.
Not quite, but not like a little different, but like on the same train. Like they're on the same train. I loved, I think that for me, the beginning of it with just the arpeggiated piano after a while got a little like I wanted something more to happen. I was happy when the orchestral stuff kind of came in because it is really beautiful, and the shadow harmony is really nice too. Like that's really beautiful too.
It's interesting that you say that because there is a shadow element in this game. Like there's a darkness that accompanies this particular character. There's a whole scene that, it's a whole complicated story, but yeah, they're the two voices. It's like the character like shifting out and like trying to become a different version of themselves and being pulled back by their past and so on and so forth. So there's a real element there. Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. It very much is that strophic Schubert thing that we know. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Very, like, oh, it's the same song, just a little bit different. I actually love the drums when they come in that second section. Elevate it just slightly because it does get a little boring. Not boring in the sense that like it's beautiful, but like just in that thing that we talked about, where if there's too much repetition, it can kind of hinder the experience.
Yeah, and I think too, it's it's like the rhythmic aspects of so many of these songs are so interesting. And I think it's like one of the things that I miss a lot of times in classical music straight ahead because there isn't that underpinning. I almost felt in this one that the vocalist needed a little more freedom because there were times where it felt like she was just a little bit behind, like she wanted to take a little bit more time, and which I would have liked to have heard too. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it certainly is so much more flexible than the things we've heard like at the beginning of our time together too, which is really super interesting.
We're in it now. We're in a modern.
Yeah, and I love the fact that to your point about kind of tonality, like the fact that this is minor, but it is also a little modal, and the fact that we do get that kind of wistfulness and that hoping from kind of a place that doesn't feel super optimistic. I mean, that's something that I think comes through quite clearly in this. Like, so given the context that you gave about this character and their path, that makes a lot of sense.
Yep. Yeah. Cool. So, what we haven't listened to a lot of is, actually we haven't really listened to any battle music in this. So let's get this. This is called Lady Maria of the Astral Clock Tower. It is just, just if you hear it. It's going to be a little bombastic. Let's just say it's a very difficult fight in a very difficult game. This series is known for From Software made this game. This is called Bloodborne. It's got like a Lovecraftian influence, Victorian influence, turn of the 18th century. Vibes are pretty bleak. And so Lady Maria, when you grab her and she says, "You do well to not disturb a corpse," and then she fights you and she has like blood swords and things. It's a very, very difficult fight. So I think you'll vibe with this.
Sweet.
I mean, it's nonstop. The whole time.
That's like this awesome cross between like the Bedlam theme from Rake's Progress and Sweeney Todd and the Mozart Requiem. Like, you know what I mean? Like you get a little bit of everything. You get like the crunch, you get the big choral stuff at the end. It's like that's sweet. I'd be sad that she killed me, but if that played after I was dead, I'd be okay.
Good. I'm glad you like that because you were talking about Carmina Burana earlier, and I think that FromSoft, these particular tracks are just so. There's another one that I'll share with you maybe after, just because of the timing, but they're just so epic, and some of these tracks are some of the best tracks in video games that have ever been written. And I think that, a piece like this, if you did program it in conjunction with something, would absolutely fit, and it would be intense, and it would be difficult for the chorus, and it would be satisfying for a listener to feel on the edge of their seat, and to feel that tension, which I think people don't understand that classical music can cause a lot of tension, and it can cause us to feel uncomfortable and be afraid and so on and so forth, So it's cool. I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah. I mean, it's not supposed to, like, to your point, like, classical music was supposed to make us feel things, like it wasn't just supposed to be background music. That's a pretty recent phenomenon. But yeah, you could that's a great piece.
Cool. Next up is something that came out this year. It's called Adrift. And it's from actually a video game. So it's a role-playing game, but it's a musical. And Austin O'Leary composed it, and there's literally like you pick an option, and then the vocal line will shift, and it will go on a different. So it's yeah. So there's like I forget how many tracks Austin recorded, but basically there's 4 albums, because each of the things, like depending on what dialogue you pick, the lyrics will shift and the interaction will change.
Wow!
Cool.
Like a boat
lost
at sea, with no sails, not a breeze. I am drifting cold waters, no star to be seen. Is the world too much, or is it just me? Everything I set upon unravels at my feet. Everything I've learned wasted on a girl who doesn't know how to be free. Like a boat lost at sea, with no sails, not a breeze. I am drifting cold waters, no star to be seen. With the fire furious, I have burned my tongue. Grief from all the promises, too many dreams unsung. All the steps I didn't take, and paths proved untrue. Is there any path through? Like a boat lost at sea, oh, I'm about to with no sails, not a you breeze. Still have your life ahead. I am drifting cold waters, no star to be seen. I paddle hard enough, I'll fight the waves, try to be tough. Can I belong to the sea? Like a boat lost at sea, with no sails, not a breeze. I am drifting cold waters, no star to be seen.
I had to listen to that in its entirety. What do you think of that?
That's cool. I mean, like, it feels like a music theater piece, right? Like, it feels like a conversation, like two subsequent conversations happening that aren't related at all. One who's aware and one who's not. Yeah, I feel like I would like it like. There's something that I want that it doesn't quite have, and I can't. I'm trying to put my finger on what that is, but it's lovely. It just, I think that there's just something missing, and I'm not articulating it.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see like the actual, like the full on.
Yeah.
Because that's one example, and so the thing is if everything is optional and choice, like it's sort of like
how do all the melodies work together, right?
Yeah, right. And I think that's really the curiosity to me.
Yeah.
I also there's something really interesting about like I'm not sure if these two they're fantastic actors. And I think like also coming from the world of opera and coming from the world of singing and like being trained classically, I wonder what it would sound like in a different sort of soundscape with different artists performing. But I wonder if that's not like a prejudice that I have that is inaccurate. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I as you talk through that first, I think the thing that is missing for me in that excerpt is probably related to the structure of the show, right? Because if all these things have to dovetail, they're going to be limited to a certain sonic palette and a certain choice of keys that they have to go through. And I think maybe that's what I'm responding to in the saying that it's missing something, because the harmony is fairly static and programmed at that point, whereas the stuff we've heard prior has been really kind of wide ranging, so it felt very kind of weird down. Yeah. But like to your point, it is difficult. It's not difficult. It's it does take some thinking to switch my head from opera mode to not opera mode, and for me they're two very different ways of listening. And I almost always do want to hear it sound in a classical voice, because that's something that is easier for me to process. Probably the same as you. That's what we have spent so much time doing. And I do find sometimes the pop and the music theater voices actually get an outsized emotional reaction from me, because they are so hot is not the right word, but like they are straighter tone into the microphone, less creation of an atmosphere or an acoustic around it, and it feels much more immediate. And sometimes it just makes me a little uncomfortable, just because it is so much more vulnerable. Yeah, which I know probably some people love, right?
Yeah, well, because that's like the human emotion aspect, right? Yeah. But then I think a lot of people, and maybe that's one of the reasons that people have sort of a struggle with opera, is that it is sort of this manufactured quality that sounds. My dad always used to get on me about this. He'd be like, "It sounds a little too manufactured." But like, Dad, you're not. He'd like rotary fly. He'd be like, "Dude, it's like, it needs to sound a little bit more natural. It's a little bit too Dad, what the fuck does that even mean? You don't know. I don't even know. What does that mean?
What does that mean? Oh my gosh, I don't even know. I've seen people write that in comments before, and I'm like, I'm going to need you to tell me what that is, because I don't know what that means.
More than anything, I think it's actually an amazing thing that this kind of this undertaking, a role-playing musical, exists, because that's not.
Yeah, I mean, like, and when you think about how like like, first of all, like, I would think that the storyboarding, if that's something that happens with computer games, that it would be really intense to do a player game anyway. And then you're doing it with those additional musical, tonal, harmonic restrictions on it. That's I mean, like, I can't wait to see it now. I don't play games, but maybe I'd play a game that doesn't, you don't have to shoot because I'm not very bad.
You just have to push a button.
I could push a button.
All right. Speaking of opera, let's switch back to opera. This is from a game called Lost Ark. This is a live performance, actually. This soprano is ungodly good. And this is called Nostalgia of Phantasm. Phantasm.
The names, by the way, like the creativity that goes into the concepts and even just the names. I'm like, oh, that sounds like it's evocative. It's so cool.
But this is from the Lost Ark concert that they did. And I'm really excited for you to listen to this and see it. It's fun. It's like modern Verdi, I would say.
슬픔, 불안, 절망, 공포. 아스텔지어가
It's very magic
시작되리라.
flute.
Yeah. She'd be a bitchin' queen of the night. Yeah, you weren't kidding me. And Go on, girl. I love the conductor. He's having such fun. Awesome. She's great. That soloist is bonkers. That's
So graceful, too.
beautiful. Like that's a, first of all, so glad she had a mic because that orchestra.
There's no way.
That's bonkers. And I feel like that, we had we got to a little past the middle, and then all of a sudden it got bigger, and I was like, how the frick does it get bigger and louder here? Like, didn't you I thought they laid it on the floor the first part, and they were just like,
yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
yeah, it makes me I did have one question though when I was listening to it, because you were talking about the reasons why some stuff isn't programmed in the concert hall, and there are a lot of Verdi-ish things in this, and I wonder if that's some of the reservation, because do you put a piece like this on a show with some big Verdi and invite a comparison that might not be attractive to one or the other? I wonder. Because there is a lot, I think there's a room for it, but I think that I would want to be, if I were putting it on at a concert, I would want to be careful about what I paired it with, because I would want both of them to be seen as
Same.
right, have that same kind of thing. But boy, that's gorgeous. That soprano soloist was great. The Latin, yeah, I mean, that was great. That was bonkers.
It is the spot. It's so captivating too. You know what I mean? You just get sucked into it. It's crazy.
And that conductor is having more fun than any human being. You could tell he's just yeah, and I don't blame him one bit. I would be having just that. That looks like a great time.
Yeah, no, that I wanted to share that with you because I knew you would have appreciated that.
Love that.
So speaking of Latin, pretty much I never do one of these without including something relating to Latin, and one of my favorite video games ever, which is Ace Combat 7, which has incredible Latin lyrics that I'd like to share with you now. So it's part of a trio, but I played you the last. I played you the more hyped up one.
Yeah, that's super. I love, like, first of all, it does sound like a call to action, kind of like you can hear the yeah, like you're like getting ready for something. Like the only Latin I've sung has been like the church Latin, ecclesiastical Latin, and some of the like stresses, I was like, wait, where's the syllable going? Like I couldn't figure it out, and I was really glad to have the text, because like the Latin is actually great. Like it's a really beautiful kind of way to take those sentiments and both elevate them and also tie them back into time in a way that like makes you
exactly
like, it's like making you a lineage of like
yeah.
That's
what's so amazing about it. You know what this game is about? It's about fighter planes, shooting planes. And there are other tracks that I could play the entire album. I love every single track because it literally combines like Steely Dan, like ZZ Top, like there's like some like legit, and then there's a random like Latin chorus in it, and the meme is you're in trouble when the sky starts speaking Latin, because because there's a reverence here. And what's really cool about it is that it's essentially like the planes themselves are like gods, and these metallic beings of, it's just fighter planes, but the way that the drama is built up, it's very operatic,
yeah.
And like you're fighting in this one, you're fighting literally a man who's determined to send off a nuclear bomb out of a submarine, the Alicorn. And so that's why it's called the Alicorn. And you're literally floating around. You have to shoot this little tiny hole. And so like, you hear this, I mean, it's so like, it's virile, it's intense. Sorry. I get comments sometimes that are like, oh, more Ace Combat. And it's like, you don't understand. Like, this is like, for me as a person who comes from this classical world, like, it's so satisfying. It's cool.
I mean, like, you want to tie that back into the Carmina, like there's a bunch, I mean, like, just from having listened to it like 2 nights ago, like there's a lot of that kind of, what is it? It's like, it's a harmony that is like fairly open, like you were saying before, like it is a fairly open harmony. It's like super like bass treble, like man kind of heavy, with that kind of driving rhythm. Like it's hard to not get kind of like amped up about it, right? Like, yeah.
Cool. All right, we're almost done. I've got some fun stuff for you. We're going to listen to half of this one. This is a little bit jazzy. I think you'll vibe with it. It is here. It's called Last Surprise from Persona 5.
And credits Magnum PI. I love it.
Pretty much, yeah.
I love it though, man.
Sure we got the clue how that this we go. Don't you know? No more art. And as you look to the horizon, not a cloud, but then stormy weather's go too cold. Seems like it crept up out of nowhere. All around you is not what you foretold. You never see it coming.
Oh my God. Love it. And I love that it's a woman singing like you're gonna get your ass kicked. My little
get them 2 steps ahead, yeah. So step into my way, stand out. It's a trap, 1 more step, and you're dead. Why just a bigger second ago? It's not an accident that no one hears your cries as your last dream seems to deserve. You'll never see it coming. You see that my mind is the best for eyes. You're done.
that's fun. It's like a little bit of like Shaka, a little bit of like a theme song at the begin. I think it's the beginning that really like got me with like the TV like theme song. But like you get this like little like, 70s groove, 70s late 80s groove, a little bit of funk. Like that's fun.
Yeah, and it's an anime game. It's a game like
What?
Personas are like these like is some like God, I can't explain it. I played 100 hours of this game, and there were like 50 more hours, and I couldn't. I couldn't finish it. It's a great game though, a great series, and it's super well loved. But I think it's awesome because you're introducing people to like funk and like jazz. It's
I love that. That's
cool.
great. And like I feel like that's definitely not a texture we've talked about yet today.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I mean, that's great that like it really is the whole gamut. I mean, that's cool.
And that's the thing, yeah. And great segue. Are you into heavy metal?
I was at one point. I haven't listened to it for a long time.
All right.
Faster
Well-
Pussycat, Metallica, like
sure.
all the old guys.
Yeah. Well, this is called Tenebre Rosso Sangue, and I play it for literally everybody who is open-minded enough that I think that they'll appreciate it. And let's just say it's the evolution of Bach and Buxtehude.
Yeah. All right. I'm ready when you are.
Rock and organ music. All right.
You know what, kind of side note, like one of my dreams is to do like some kind of Handel opera, but with like all electric instruments, like electric guitar and like the whole thing. Like that's one of the things on my.
I love that.
Someday.
That would sound so freaking cool
It'd
too.
be great, right?
This is gonna go very hard, so just be prepared.
Sweet. Love a pipe organ, man. That's great. That's awesome, man. Like my hair's not long enough to like whip it around anymore. It's in mosh, but like that was great.
There's that.
Awesome. Sorry.
I never know who's gonna vibe with that song. I love that you vibe with it. It's just like the most unsuspecting people vibe to that.
Right? Oh, that was great though. Like, I don't know. Like, I love the juxtaposition of like that, like incredibly crazy drum, like that, like underpinning, that like hard underpinning with all of that, like organ filigree, and the fact that it's like pipe organ instead of like something else, like also makes it like super strong. It's like an archaic way of saying it's gonna hurt way more, right? Like, isn't it like, you know, you just like, oh, I am in real trouble now because like not only
up, yeah.
right.
Basically,
it's gonna end very badly. Yeah, no, that's great.
I love that you like that. Yeah. The first time I heard it, because I've heard a couple of these tracks, I was like, okay, everyone wants me to take a look at Tenebroso song. I love the name. Okay, cool. It's like a game where you're like a killer robot and you have to kill like denizens of hell, basically. And I think this fight is against Sisyphus, you know, the famous
yeah, right.
Pushing the boulder up the rock. I forget.
Yeah.
But I just remember being like, what? How are you going to take like classical organ and then just flip it? So, and Keith Church is such an amazing composer, and so anyway, so
I have like 3 people I'm going to send that to, and we're done.
Really?
All these links, because like I have a couple of friends who are like also like in the music industry and like the opera stuff that I'm going to be like, do you know this? So you need to listen to it. That's great. I love it.
This is how we spread the video game.
The gospel. Yes.
Yeah. I was about to say yes. So speaking of things that are ancient and sort of old-timey, Baldur's Gate 3 recently came out, and it is a game. These are the last 2 songs. Baldur's Gate 3, and then I've got another one that you'll really vibe with, I think. Baldur's Gate 3 is, think Dungeons and Dragons, quite literally, Dungeons and Dragons. You can do anything you want as long as the dice allow it, and it is great. This is Raphael's theme, which I believe, yes, Raphael, I haven't actually heard this yet. He is, you meet him along your journey. He is the devil.
Lives, oh mortal lives, expire. Souls go to their dooms in flame forevermore.
Okay.
Hell has its laws. Hell. Effect and the cause. Curtain falls. But
didn't
hold
expect
your
that.
applause. Swerve. For now down
say that all the time, dude.
applause.
I do love a diabolical voiceover. That's
Lives, oh mortal lives, expire. Souls go to their dooms in flame forevermore.
Fools, how hard you have fought. Brave, but it's all been for naught. True souls that couldn't be bought. Doomed, detected, and caught.
love it.
No more deals, it's over. The final act, you're doomed. No more grace, it's over. This house of hope, you're doomed.
love it. I love it.
It's giving me Disney vibes.
Right, for real. Like, I think that one of the things, I'm like right in the sun.
Get on the sun.
Like, get out of the sun. One of the things I like listening to a bunch of these back to back, though, the one thing that I'm finding that I really love is that the vocalism in these tracks is so honest. Like, there's not like, it's all connected to the support. It's got some vibrato in it, regardless of like whether it's a classical presentation or like something that's like more mixy, more empty, more pop. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. I really love the fact that that's that presence and that strength and that clarity is part of this, like these different worlds. Like, it's really great.
Well, I think leaning on to that vocalism and leaning on to like, you know, the what makes, I think, singing such a wonderful thing that we have the ability to do. Anybody basically has the ability to do is a really exciting thing, and having it in there, you're right. There is a clarity in the vocalism, and there is a sort of bringing it to the surface. You know what I mean? It's an important part. I love that there's children playing. It's a beautiful, beautiful first day of September. Yes, we filmed this on September 1st, everybody. Yes. So I guess to wrap up, there's one more track that I want to play for you that is such a vibe. But, you know, you are one of my favorite types of people because you don't know anything. I mean, besides you're nice and my friend, but beyond that,
like nothing about this world at
you
all.
don't know anything about this. And, you know, you're around opera pretty much constantly. So, you know, I sort of wanted to know what your takeaway has been after listening, and you can give me your completely honest opinion, of course, but like, you know, what have you come away with?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're like, it's so interesting. Like, when I think about the way that I'm hearing the writing for a lot of these storytellings, and when I think about some of the stuff that I'm hearing in the operatic canon, like, I feel like there is some, I wish there was a little bit of cross-pollination, right? Because there is a momentum and a viscerality that the video game music has that sometimes we don't get in the new operatic stuff that is being written these days. It tends to and I'm not a composer. I like no aspersions on anyone, because God knows I couldn't do it if I tried. But I do feel like there's there are some lessons maybe that, or takeaways for impetus and momentum and driving excitement, because I think that's something that this genre is super good at, right? Like, it's definitely driving you towards different emotions, different states of mind. And I do also love that they're not afraid of a long line. Mm-hmm. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, they really are. There's not a lot of, even with the spoken text, it's all fairly lyrical even. Mm-hmm. Even in this last example, like the woman who was singing on that, like, it wasn't like like, there was a lot of line, there was movement in it. There are, I think, a lot of parallels. I think, I don't know, like, it would be very easy to find someone who liked, like, it would be helpful for me, because like, if someone liked something that you had listened, that played for me today, it would be easy for me to say, oh, you like this? Here are 3 things I think you might like from the classical or the operatic canon. Like, there's really such a tie-in between them. Yeah, I mean, I thought that, like, that's, and I'm also just like, I'm amazed at the breadth. Like, there's really, and not that I shouldn't, like, I should have maybe expected it, but having no traction with it aside from like Tetris and like the old stuff, really, like, knowing kind of how symphonic and how, like, I'm also fascinated to be like, how do they put that together with the playing, and how, like, how does it work? I'm super interested in that now, which is not something I thought about before our conversation at all. But I do love the fact that there is some real synergy between the two, between this.
It's huge. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like, now I'm very curious to see, like, what are ways to kind of feel this out and think about it. So I am grateful to you for this conversation, because it's making me thinking in a lot of different ways.
Of course. And I think, you know, like, for instance, I'm thinking back to Stray Gods, and I think, like, imagine if there was a world where, I mean, it'd be fairly unfeasible to have a split path opera. But imagine, you know, there is a world like.
We did it with Zaid. where like the
Oh
end
yeah.
Saeed was unfinished and we gave the audience choices and the audience voted, but we had to put together a number of different endings for it. It's not unheard of, but it's not been done to the extent of that game that I think that's what I think is like the extent of that, the breadth of it is super interesting.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm glad. I'm glad that I could expose you to a whole new sound world that isn't just beeps and boops. And I think deserves a lot more respect than I think people, people give it respect, but they don't like sit actively give it respect. You know, it's a weird thing, but, yeah, but before I let you go, I just want to let you listen to one more piece that I recently discovered that I adore. Hopefully you love it as much as I do. Just to even give you even more variety of this song. And that's the other thing too that I should say is that I think like video games, Ryan McKinney said this, that they're not encumbered by the status quo of like societal expectations.
Yeah.
There's no rules. If you feel like composing something, you can. And so like, this is a prime example. Like this, you could hear this on the radio, but you won't because it's almost too unique. It's a really interesting thing. So this is They Might As Well Be Dead from Risk of Rain 2 Survivors of the Void.
Thanks, Jack.
Yeah.
Back to your
Yeah, I was trying to figure like where I can go. Is that go right here? That's awesome. That would be something I'd love to see live. Like, that seems like that's a baller group of and like, I don't know if it was like tabla and sitar or pipa or African drums. Like, I don't know.
It's the baklava and bongos.
Sweet. Like, it was like fun to have that very different tonal world come in. And then when the synth came in with that, like with the panning back and forth, like, that's a great example of how electronic can be woven into these fabrics and done so like in a really beautiful way. Like, that was really like one of my favorite parts, I think, was that coming in and just panning around, because it like gave you this center line that everything else kind of spun.
It's such a good track.
Yeah, it's great.
I just discovered it recently, and I've been obsessed with it.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Leanne, thank you so much for taking the time out. I know you and I have been playing we're both like sleep deprived all the time, and I'm just super grateful that I got to share this with you and you got to experience it. And I know that you're such an advocate for the arts, and that I actually feel like you may actually start advocating for video game music now.
Yeah, I mean, this has been super educational. I'm so delighted, first of all, that we finally got together, because it's lovely to see you and to reconnect. But also, like, that, it's like a jaded old lady. Like, I feel like there's a lot of things that I've heard, and I got to hear a lot of stuff today that was completely new to me. So I'm really grateful for that. And I do love all of the correlations and how you make it so easy to make the connections between the classical music world and a lot of the stuff that we listen to. So thank you for that. That was so fun.
Of course, yes. And thanks as always, everybody. Feel free to subscribe, and we'll see you later. Bye, everybody.